All right, welcome to the shop here in Canterbury, New Hampshire. Now, maybe you're not like me, maybe you're not a habitual procrastinator, but maybe you are, and maybe you find yourself in that kind of fix right now. But it seemed like every year I'd be making Christmas gifts and I'd have them there, and it was always a push to get them finished in time. And I tried all kinds of methods, and only later did I come up with a few that I think are time-tested, and you may enjoy seeing them. Now, if you watch me a lot, you're going to see some things you've seen before probably, but there will be some new things, I guarantee. But anyway, when it comes to finishes, you have your basic oil finishes, like Danish oil or tung oil, and polyurethane varnish blends and all of that. And those are great, but those are not what you want to reach for when you're really trying to get done, because they tend to take close to 12 to 24 hours to dry between coats. You don't have time for that. So what you want is something that cures quickly and is more of what you might call an evaporative finish. These tend to be reactive finishes. They need to cure, and it just takes time for the molecular structure or something to solidify and be ready for the next coat. Now, those are oil varnishes. The ones that I'm going to focus on mainly tonight are surface finishes or non-penetrating finishes, like shellac and lacquer. These are some old tried and true finishes. They dry very quickly. They both have the similar properties in that when you spray them on, you don't have to scuff between coats, and make sure the previous coat is rough enough for the second coat to grab into. Like curative type finishes like oil finishes do. The great thing about finishes like shellac and lacquer is that they melt into the previous coat. So there's no worry about bond strength or anything like that. And you can spray them thin, which is one of the keys, and multiple coats is always better than trying to bang it on in one thick coat. I know that's a temptation, to try to just get on a heavy coat, but you won't get the best results like that. One of Pugmore's famous sayings he used to say every now and then was, "You never rush a finish, Tom. You never rush a finish." And it was funny because there were times we rushed finishes, and I always think of that when I'm rushing a finish, and which seems to happen more often than not. But one of the keys to that was mainly that you just get better results if you let it dry and go with multiple light coats rather than one big heavy one. That's one of the big keys to fine finishing. One of the finishes we've talked about before is mineral oil, and remember, that's an extremely fast finish for food-safe type finishes like the cutting board we made a while back. And this end grain cutting board, that's all we finished it with, was mineral oil. You also can use like walnut oil on something like this. And this I haven't touched since that night we put it on, if you were here. And it looks beautiful. It's nicely saturated, and it didn't take any more than that. That's probably one of the easiest finishes to apply, and it's ready the next day. So you can make your cutting boards and have them done the night before. One little caution though, I have done this. I've finished and made cutting boards the day or night before, and then wrapped them, and you see the oil coming through the wrapping paper. That's not good. I don't know. Maybe wrap it in wax paper or something before you put on the wrapping paper. It'll make a better impression. By the way, if you like this content, go ahead and subscribe. It's good for all of us. And also like and share and comment as you like. And ring that bell so you don't miss a single video in the future. All right, I'm going to just show you how I apply it in a few situations and a little more complexity. Of course, the simplest thing is to just spray the lacquer or shellac directly on the dry wood. But I'm going to show you if you want a little more enhancement to some finishes, like, say, curly maple. I just got this little stick sample of curly maple. We'll do a quick finish sample on this. But we're actually going to add a little stain to it and try to make this curl pop a little more by adding an aniline dye stain. So I'm just going to prepare this one piece so you can see the steps. So I'm just going to come down to the end of the bench and get this on. And get it into the dogs. Now, curly maple is a difficult wood to plane sometimes. I skimmed this over the joiner and it came out pretty nice. I had very light tear out. If your joiner knives are sharp and you go slow and you take a light cut, you'll get the best results. One other little trick with curly maple is dampen the wood, just dampen it with some water before you skim it over. And something about that also relaxes the fibers a little more, so you tend not to get the tear out. So that's what I actually did on this, and it's come out nice, but I have to scrape it, so I'm going to give it a little card scraping here. And this is nice, hard wood, and I like scraping curly maple because there's something about the scraping which seems to even more so enhance the depth and bring the curl out to pop. So if you do scrape it, it will help you in that way. That's good. And now you want to sand. I'm going to just go right to 220 for this. And there we go. Now I'm going to hit it with a quick 320. Now, I'm going to use a water aniline dye stain on this, and I'll show you a secret, tricky way to get that to dry fast, because we don't have time. That's the theme of the night. All right, so I've got that sanded to 320. Now I'm going to apply some aniline dye, so I want to just dampen that slightly. So you want to dip your rag into your gluey gray water, and I'm just going to put a light, just very lightly dampen it to raise the grain.
I like how you assume everybody has gluey gray water.
So I've got that dampened now, and what's happening is after I sanded and scraped, now the fibers, as they dry, some of the little hairs that got torn in that process will be standing up. You want to do that if you're going to apply a water-based stain or finish, which this is the only piece we'll be doing that to. So it's the only one that I'm going to raise the grain on. Now, one way to speed everything up is get yourself a heat gun. I guess you could use a hairdryer, but they're not as hot. You can't burn down the shop as well with a hairdryer, so you want to use this. I mean, this gets hot, but it's a good way to speed things up. You're being very patient, thank you. Talk amongst yourselves. All right. That's feeling almost dry. All right. So now I'm going to I can feel it's a little rough. That's the grain that came up. So I'm going to knock that off with a very light sanding of the same 320, or it could be broken down paper. But you're not resanding, you're just skimming off those fibers of the raised grain. And that feels good. Now, I want to add a little bit of color here. I'll just do it on half of it, and the other half we'll let just be natural shellac and see what it looks like. Okay, so let's just go from there down, and I'm going to use medium maple, which will kind of push this to a kind of an antiqued appearance of maple pretty fast. And if you made something out of maple and you want to get it looking nice and not look like that raw white wood, it'll actually look aged if you do this. And you want to get your gloves on so you don't get your fingers dirty. I'm going to get a little water. But look at that, that's a nice color, huh? That medium maple. I'm not going to put it on too heavy because I got to get this done. But so that gives you a nice kind of yellow, amber, warm kind of mapley look. And when that soaks in, I don't know if you can pick it up, but it absorbs a little more in the end grain of the roll, and it starts to bring out the grain a little more. All right, so we'll leave that for a minute, but we're not going to just leave it because we're in a hurry. We're going to hit it with the heat gun. So we got to put finish on top of this, and we don't want it being wet when we're applying the shellac. So I had a pretty busy week so far. I had the fine woodworking guys were over here on Tuesday, and we got very nearly finished the special shaker dresser project. So I'm really excited to have that come out and show you that.
Tom, Jeff and Shelley are asking what the mixture you just put on is and what the concentration was.
I'm trying to think. It's either J.E. Moser's aniline dyes. You can get those in small quantities from, I think, all the Woodworker Supply, I believe. I believe Woodcraft has some. But one of my favorite sources for shellac and dye stains, really cool, is Wood Finishing Enterprises. And I think if you just search Wood Finishing Enterprises, go to their site, and you'll find the aniline dyes, water stain, and look for their medium maple. And I mix it not by weight, but by measure. I measure, so this is a half teaspoon of the powder aniline dye to 16 ounces of water. So you could do a quarter teaspoon to, this is a 16-ounce jar, so I think I just used a quarter and mixed up half of this. Because it goes a long way. It's really inexpensive. And the great thing about Wood Finishing Enterprises is they sell it in large bottles. So you can, if you buy a bottle of a certain kind of dye, it may be a lifetime supply, depending how much you're using it. So this, I would like if this was a little more brown, but it's okay. All right, I'm going to let that dry. And while we're waiting for that, I am going to show you some other finishes. One of my favorite finishes on cherry, this is one I don't think I've ever shown because it's kind of borderline. However, I've used it very successfully when I've been in a jam. I just have never seen anyone do this, but I picked it up from watching a great master finisher explaining French polishing. Okay, so first let me say, one of the things I really love, one of the finishes I really love on cherry is an oil-based finish, because there's something about the way the oil oxidizes or enhances the richness of the color of the cherry over time. I've put just straight shellac on cherry, and there's something about, because that's laying just on the surface with no oil in there first, it doesn't have the richness. So I'm always trying to put an oil on there, but that's not a fast finish. So I was watching this master, George Frank. Some of you might have heard about him. He's not around anymore. He was an older guy when I was watching his videos. He was a great finisher down in France, and he did all kinds of interiors. And during his demonstration on French polishing, I've seen a lot of people demonstrate it. French polishing is basically using shellac into a pad, a ball of linen with like wool inside, and you charge it, you kind of load it up with shellac and alcohol, and then you put some mineral oil in there too, to act almost as a lubricant. And when I first heard that, I was like, mineral oil and shellac? Those can't mix. But they do. They mix. And in fact, when I saw George Frank's method, he took the mineral oil, he put it right on his whole demonstration board. He pushed the mineral oil around as if he was finishing a cutting board. All right, so you can take mineral oil and just look at that. It looks like you're putting on a beautiful finish, right? And I'm going to do it just on half so we can see the difference with and without the mineral oil going on first. So we're getting nice kind of the oil-rich depth appearance on the cherry. And then you just wipe it off, okay? So it's like you just put a coat of finish on there. But this isn't technically dry. Mineral oil doesn't dry, you know? But it's fine. It is compatible with the shellac. So you can get kind of the best of both worlds. You get the speed, get the mineral oil on there, almost as if you were going to French polish. Now, if you were French polishing, you go right on there, and it acts as kind of a lubricant, and the shellac goes right on top, and some of the oil remains in, some of it gets what they call spirited out as you continue the process, and the alcohol and whatever draws some of the moisture out of the oil out. But some of it remains. So I'm just going to wipe it off, and that looks like a pretty decent finish, but it's not a cured, like surface protective finish. So let's put on some shellac. Now, you could spray it like this out of a can, or you could spray it with a spray system like I have, and I've shown you before, like a gun like this, with a gravity feed gun. This is what I tend to use. It's less expensive. But if you're only doing a little, these cans, aerosol cans, are super handy. And did you link to these things?
I did.
Okay.
Ken's asking, when using an oil on cherry without a seal coat of shellac, how do you prevent splotching?
This is a big, I just had this conversation with someone the other day because everybody thinks of blotching with cherry. Now, some cherry blotches and some is just the waviness of the grain. Now, there's a distinction. Sometimes I'm planing a piece of cherry and you can see like this weird kind of area that I just know is going to absorb the oil to such a degree that it's going to look gross. It's going to mess with the whole appearance of the cherry plank. And it's worth doing a test sometimes if you think you've got that. But those pieces of cherry are rare when you're buying high-grade cherry. The normal grades of cherry are going to have some variation in color. To me, that's not a problem. I mean, you can put shellac down first and then oil over. But a lot of great, beautiful cherry furniture is just oil varnishes. So this is the top of a chest, right? Now, can you see? I don't know what you're seeing in the camera. Do you see these spots here? Mm-hmm. Can you see them? Mm-hmm. All right, and now I'm going to turn it over. Do you see them now? Not really?
No.
I mean, it's kind of a rolling figure. They're not like a problem enough, and this is just oil finish, but they're very subtle, and I think you got to pick your spots when you're going to seal the cherry and when you're not. Only when I see a piece of cherry that appears to have, it's kind of like a punkiness, like when I see it, I could only explain it if I had a piece I could show you. But in that case, you do want to put a wash coat of shellac first, and then you can go on with your oil varnishes. But you're not going to get the same penetration of the varnishes, obviously, into the wood. So that's why if I feel confident about the quality of cherry, I'm going right with the oil on the cherry, like this board. I mean, do you see unsightly blotching on that? All right, so now I've got us to this point. Now I'm going to put on some shellac. And this is not like technically dry, but this works when you're in a pinch. So I'll brush it on rather than spray it on. I'm going to use some of this clear shellac. We don't want as much amber on there. You can definitely spray it on. I think I'll spray part and I'll brush part. Let's just see what happens. All right, so I'm going to do this half brushing and I'll do the other half. So let's just come down. I'm just going to drag it. You don't want to go over it a lot with shellac because it's a fast curing finish. Now I'm into the oil. You know what? It makes no difference. I would go right with the shellac. Actually, it does. I'm just not seeing it as much on this one. But let me spray the other side and we'll see what we get. Over time, I think it just gets richer as it ages. All right, so I'll just spray across here. Just going to overlap my... There you go. So you should experiment with this on a piece of scrap. If you want to use the oil, you can go oil, then shellac right over the top. Now, on a piece like cherry, I don't want to use shellac that has much color in it. Like I wouldn't want to use amber, orange shellac, because it's almost too orange on there. But for some species, it's really great to use the orange shellac because of the warm quality it gives. I'm going to set this over side here and let it dry a little bit. All right, so I got some orange shellac. So this is going to give you more amber. Yeah, they now call it amber. They don't call it orange anymore, even though technically it is orange. And the clear is this. So if you want the amber, like I would use the amber on darker woods, like walnut. Okay, walnut. This is the piece I was showing a little while ago. Do you remember that? We made our charcuterie board drawing with the bird. Well,
Turkey.
I just sanded the bird off, and I'm going to just show you a little bit of shellac. And yet this time, well, let's just do a little comparison of clear alongside amber, okay, so that you can see what happens. Now, notice a wood like walnut is almost purplish, which is sometimes referred to as a cold color in the color spectrum, like purple, blue, more of a cold color. So you need the warmth of an amber tint to balance and enrich it to its full beauty. Now, clear does not have, in my opinion, enough of that in it. So this is a great fast drying finish. It'll get you done fast. But let's just put on a little clear here. You can spray this. You can brush it too. If you don't have the spray, just go like that, okay? If you're going to brush it, you want to cut it almost in half with alcohol, denatured alcohol, and get the green colored can. It's the safer blend of alcohol. All right, and then let's get some amber. Or
Do you cut the shellac before you apply it with a spray gun? Would you do that too?
Yes.
Okay.
So it comes in what's called a 3-pound cut. You're going to cut it basically in half, 50-50.
Either way, spray gun or brushing on?
Yes.
Okay.
Because you don't want, 3-pound is a little heavy. You can go between 1.5 pounds to 2 pounds, so you don't have to cut it fully in half, and you'll get really good results. All right, let me get some more of this clear out so we get the
Tom, while you're goofing around there, linseed oil, the same thing as the mineral oil?
I am not sure. boiled linseed will cure. So another technique, like if I want that rich color with the oil on cherry and I have more time, I would actually put like Danish oil down first and then spray, let it cure, 24 hours or whatever, overnight. And then I would spray shellac on top of that. I don't use a lot of boiled linseed oil anymore, although that doesn't mean it's not okay. I just can't speak to that. But it's not the same as mineral oil. I was using the mineral oil because I know that's compatible with shellac. I'm not sure. The boiled is going to you want to let that dry because that is a curative type oil. All right, so let's go with the amber. And that doesn't look bad, right? We don't have much on there, so we're not seeing the full color. But let's see how the amber looks with. See how much, can you see that warmth? Mm-hmm. I mean, isn't that a world of difference?
Yeah, it is.
So you want, on a wood like this, it makes a huge difference. Can you see the difference? Maybe you can't see it as good as I can. It is warm. I mean, I feel warm over there. No, it's definitely a big difference. I'll put a little more on here. So you'd put a couple coats on, and trust me, I don't know, you probably can't pick it up with the light, right?
It's not as easy, I don't think.
Well, a couple coats, it's really big difference. This didn't really alter the kind of purplish hues. It's just not the same. It's just, trust me on that. You want to use the amber for that. And I was digging around. This is a piece of genuine South American mahogany, which you don't come by much anymore. They stopped importing it, but I've had some big chunks around over the years. It was so plentiful in the 90s, and you could buy it for $2 to $3 a board foot. Beautiful wood. And this was some of that, and I had it, and we used to always use amber shellac on this as well at Pug Moore's. And check out what happens. This is natural mahogany. I'm telling you, it has a very different rich color compared to what they're calling African mahogany now, which is from Africa, but it's not the same species as this. You see how rich that is? Now this dries super fast. In 2 hours, especially in the winter, you'll lightly sand it with like 320 paper or a little finer if you want. And it's dry when you're seeing a nice white powdery substance there. And then put on another coat. Usually just 2 or 3 coats will be enough and you'll be done. So shellac is an awesome finish when you're in a pinch for things like picture frames, mirrors. Like, remember this mirror? This is walnut with, I think, 3 thin coats of amber shellac. See that color? I mean, look at the difference. I mean, this is aged a little bit more, but see the amber color in it? Are you picking it up on the camera?
Yep.
So, but that was one of those fast finishes. So I put those coats on in one day, rubbed it out the next morning, put a little wax on it, glued that in. It was ready for wrapping. So that's an awesome, elegant, classy finish. Now, when I say rub it out, I mean I burnished it with 4-aught steel wool. So 4 zeros, the finest. It's available at most of the box stores. So the last thing, I'm going to put now a little shellac on there. Let's see what happens. Now, I'm still on the orange. This will show you how orange is not as good on white wood, okay? We'll put a little orange on here, and then we'll put some clear on. I'll put some, doesn't look bad actually there, but this is going to yellow up quite a bit. I wish I could put a couple coats on because you can't really, we had a couple hours, but that looks pretty nice, huh? Has a nice antique-y quality. You see that? And that's just with no like glazing stain or anything. Glaze is more of a colorant to try to antique material, and it's more of a what do you call it? It's like a pigmented stain. So you're putting colorant on top of the wood. It's not a translucent dye like this is. I just put an aniline translucent dye stain on, and that oil-based stain, it might be a dye stain as well, I'm not sure. But those are the best as far as being for your clarity. Now, let's get I'll just clean this out, and we'll try a little clear, and that's all I'm going to show you for tonight. I mean, you could spray the lacquer just like the shellac, but I'm not going to do that. That's a little more durable too. You know what we used to do at Pugs? We would finish the whole piece in shellac, and he didn't like having lacquer spraying in the shop at this point in his career. He's in his 70s. There was no more finishing guy in the shop. It was just Pug, me, and Billy Frazier, who cleaned up and stuff. And long story there. But we would just spray on the top of just the tops of the chest of drawers with lacquer. Actually, it was called Deft. Some of you have seen the Deft lacquer. It was marketed as a brushing lacquer. It had a little more working time, but it came in the cans, and we used satin and just spray the tops. And I'm telling you, it laid out beautifully, and it's like kind of a hot finish, and it also melts into the shellac a little bit. So it was a nice bond. Even though the shellac has a little wax in it, the lacquer right on top of it was compatible. So you can also get good results and more protective qualities with the lacquer. But it's not, the lacquer is still not as protective as, like, say, one of those tongue or varnish like the Waterlocks or the General Finishes types. All right, so now I've got the clear finish here. I'm going to go on the the unstained and the stained with the clear. So you can see we added, it's almost like the amber colorant we added brought in, you seeing that now? I don't know if you can pick up the difference in color. Like, I can clearly see this has more amber on it, but this has some because of the stain we put on. And then up here I've got clear finish, but nothing's happening. Mm-hmm. Does it look better this way? I don't know.
You can tell.
So this would dry in like a couple hours. I'd lightly sand, put on another coat. And shellac is one of the elegant finishes of history. It's such a beautiful, easy working, drying, agreeable finish. So it's fast and it's easy. If you haven't ever tried it, I would give it a shot. And you can cut it, like I said, to 1.5 pound cut. There is one other kind of seal coat shellac called seal coat, and that is wax free. It doesn't rub out quite as nice. I actually, if I was just going with shellac as my main finish, I would use one of these two because they do still have the wax in it. They work nicely. It's not a lot of wax, and they just rub out better. The seal coat, it's not gummy, but it's not quite as agreeable as these finishes. If you do use seal coat, remember it comes in a 2-pound cut, so it's already thinned more so. It's only 2/3 the viscosity of these, the clear or the amber. So these are 3-pound cuts.
If you have questions about finishes, you want a more extensive conversation about it, Tom has a course that was 5 hours on finishes. It's only $20 on our website. It's really well worth it.
Yeah, we got into stains on that. Yeah, we did.
All demonstrated.
We went more deeply into the shellacs, glazes.
All kinds of it.
Rubbing out finishes. Yeah, there was a lot in there. Yeah, I think that's worthwhile too. All right. Well, thank you all for hanging out. I hope you picked up some tips, and I hope that'll help you get that fast finish on there, on that piece you're in a rush with. And also, if you like this content, go ahead and subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss a single episode of what we're doing here. We'll see you right back here on Shop Night Live. Good night.
Good night, everybody.